With that, we can go ahead and actually get started. Uh, our- Again, my name is Jeff Hunter. I am the field CTO at NinjaOne, and our topic for today is improving security posture, improving your endpoint security. And we'll be talking about how NinjaOne can help automate this in a variety of ways, providing greater visibility over your entire IT operation. Now, I mentioned the other webinars that we've done previously so far this year, available on our YouTube channel, and security has been a pretty consistent through line in those past webinars, the ones we've done so far this year. We focused on a bunch of different areas, different focuses in the security space, and the idea for this webinar is that we're going to try to tie it all together. We're creating the security Voltron here to show you how NinjaOne can holistically address a lot of the challenges that IT teams face today. Now, we can see here some data that we have from Omdia showing where does the industry stand largely with regards to automating a lot of common IT tasks. And from what we can see here, about a quarter of people are automating, about half are somewhere in the process, thinking about it, how they want to implement it, planning. And then another quarter are firmly in the planning stages, haven't really kind of gotten out of first gear to implement more of this automation. Which I think means that there's a lot of room for improvement. There's a lot of headroom, additional benefit for roughly 3/4 of people who feel like they are not fully automating or automating to the best of their ability in their current setups. Uh, and I can personally vouch that this sort of automation has a positive impact. I think in a mature IT team, you can cut the time that you're spending on repetitive tasks by at least half, if not more. And I again, have personally struggled with this. A lot of what we're going to discuss today, I have done the hard way, the manual way. And it wasn't fun. I imagine some of you may be experiencing the same right now, and hopefully we can show a better path forward. Now, this has a demonstrable downstream impact, I think, and that comes in a couple different ways. I'll focus on two that I think are really important and relevant to our discussion today, which is that ultimately the team that's carrying out a lot of these manual processes, they get burnt out. They are not satisfied as employees. That can lead to higher turnover. That in itself has its own challenges because if you're training somebody, that in itself is a manual process that eats up a lot of time. That can, again, have downstream impacts on what we ultimately deliver to the end user. And then it has the impact of creating the greater potential for errors. And that leads to our second issue, our second gap here, which is the security gap. When we have a lack of automation in terms of a lot of our day-to-day operation, this leads to things like processes not being followed. It means that configurations are not being deployed as they should. Maybe endpoints are not being patched the way that you would want. Again, I have gone through and manually patched devices in the past. I would not recommend it for anybody. Excuse me. Uh, and I can say from firsthand experience that when a patch fails to install properly, you don't necessarily have that visibility in a manual context. And so, again, having a lot of this automated, having a tool in place that reinforces these automated actions, that raises alerts when you have potentially these actions aren't being carried out the way that you've planned and the way that you've expected. This, I think, has a real impact on the overall security of your operation. Now, this is a stat, honestly, that feels like it should be a lot higher. 95% feels oddly a low number to say that 95% of breaches are caused by human error. But it is a fact that the single biggest weak point in any particular security context tends to be the end user themselves. They are the ones who are most volatile. They're the ones who are causing the greatest complexity. They're the ones who are quite simply the variable that you have the most difficulty controlling. Uh, I'll say from my own personal experience in the non-IT sector, my neighbor had his car stolen right out in front of his house about a year or two ago. And when I heard about it, I thought, oh, did they smash the window? Did they hotwire the car? Did they do that like key fob intercept thing with infrared or RFID to kind of capture the signal? No, he left his keys in his car. And so you can guess that that might have happened, that somebody would make a human error and you would get somebody who is taking advantage of that. Uh, so in a more IT related context, I would say that it's weird to say you have a particular favorite security breach story, but this is certainly one that's stuck with me over time, which is that in 2016, the chairman of the Clinton campaign received a suspicious looking email. He forwarded it to the IT team and said, "Is this a valid email?" And the IT team responded and said, "This is a valid link." And so we clicked into it, and it was a phishing link. And it turned out that the IT person typoed, and they meant to write, "It's not a valid link." And if that doesn't show you what kind of razor's edge that we're sometimes operating on, I don't know what will. Now, the barriers to this automation, and especially in a security context when we're focused around security, this is not going to be an easy task. There are a lot of different obstacles in the way, and on top of those obstacles, there should be additional consideration on the potential impact to business operation. There is a lot of thought and care and planning that goes into improving your security posture and ensuring that uh, interruption to normal business operation is as minimized as possible, especially when it comes when implementing EDR and especially with endpoint hardening. We're going to talk a lot about endpoint hardening today. Uh, and if I have one point that I would like to emphasize about endpoint hardening, it's that you want to take a lot of care when implementing it because endpoint hardening is going to make a device more secure by making it less compatible. One of the great things about Windows is it's compatible in so many ways, which is one of the reasons why it's such a valuable operating system. That compatibility can also expose security vulnerabilities that people are going to take advantage of. And again, closing off those vulnerabilities, you would say, is a good thing. However, when that has an impact on business operation because a legacy application hasn't updated to not use an outdated version of TLS, and we close off that capability, that could again have huge impact to the operation of the business and what they're able to accomplish. I can say from firsthand experience, if the Ninja IT team turned off my ability to use USB drives with no notice to me, that would dramatically impact what I do on a day-to-day basis. And kind of how my normal operation is, or how my normal workflow is going to operate. I am loving that I'm seeing all the cars that people are driving in here. This is if anybody saw the John Mulaney "Everybody's in LA," this feels like I end up arriving at the same question: what kind of car do you drive? Now, what if we could automate the most time-consuming IT tasks? And we're actually going to go ahead and pop up a question here that's a bit of a tangentially related to this question, which is that if you could improve an aspect about your endpoint security today, what would it be? And let's leave maybe EDR out of the equation, as I know that's kind of a table stakes thing. So when we talk about automation, what does that mean? Obviously, it can mean a variety of different things. I'll focus on some core use cases here. One of them being, of course, the repetitive processes. Patching your endpoints, nobody wants to do that manually. It's not a good idea to do that manually. You want to have that streamlined, efficient, repeatable process that's going to scale with your environment. And that can come with things like, automating the little issues that end up, that could take 30 seconds to solve in an automated way that end up taking a human being 10 or 15 minutes just to go through the process. We can see that with restarting services and things like creating user accounts. We also can talk about the endpoint setup process. The process of configuring the device, delivering all the necessary configurations to make sure that the device is protected and that there aren't gaping security holes there. And of course, ongoing and monitoring, I think, which is a key focus here. You can have a script run once at onboarding all you want, but having recurring compliance checks over time to ensure that your security settings are what you expect them to be is a huge part of the process of endpoint management. And not just the initial setup, the initial device provisioning, that is, of course, necessary, but maintaining that consistency and that standardization across the entire lifecycle of the endpoint. So here we're going to cover all these topics that we see here. We're going to talk about the benefits of operating system and software application patch management within Ninja. We'll talk a little bit about an exciting open beta that we have coming out with the 5.9 release. We'll talk about NinjaOne backups, the single pane ability to know that backups have occurred. You can restore them when necessary, while also getting visibility when something has gone wrong. We'll talk about the ability to deploy AV and EDR. I'll specifically be using SentinelOne in my example, but we also offer integrations with CrowdStrike, with Bitdefender Gravity Zone, and with Webroot. And then we'll talk a little bit about endpoint hardening, about some of the out-of-the-box tools that NinjaOne gives you to get the job done fast, but also a third-party tool that gives you some enhanced auditing to compare against things like CIS benchmarks, the Microsoft security baselines, even DoD security technical implementation guides, also known as STIGs. And then finally, we'll talk about the security compliance checks, the ability to maintain this consistency over time, not just relying on a script that runs once at the onboarding cycle, but having sort of an always on view and always on alert, letting you know when something is not in compliance with what you've set inside of NinjaOne's policies. And then at the very end, assuming we have time there, we'll talk about another security adjacent feature that's coming out with our 5.9 release, just giving you a little bit of a sneak peek about what we intend to do with regards to vulnerabilities. But with that, I am going to dispense with the PowerPoint a little bit longer than I normally do on PowerPoint, but it felt necessary to kind of set the table since we're kind of tying all these webinars together. So let me go ahead and stop my share, and I will share my actual Ninja demo, and we can go ahead and kick things off. All right, hopefully everybody can see my screen here. We'll go ahead and get things started. Now, for anyone who hasn't seen Ninja before, the policy is the engine that makes this whole machine operate for the most part, or at least, let's say, 75% of your normal day-to-day operation is probably going to be inside of a policy setting. And you can map policies at the org level, the location level, however you'd like. And let's go ahead and actually take a look at the policy for our device that we're going to be using today as an example. You can see I've created a dedicated policy right here. I'll level set this by saying this isn't intended to be an exact replica of a policy that everybody is going to use in the field. It's really just for demonstration purposes. And so you're going to see some things that are missing from this policy that aren't really relevant to our conversation today. For example, I'm not really deploying any applications as a part of what I'll show you, although I imagine that many of you are going to want to deploy applications as a part of your regular workflow. So let's go ahead and go into this policy here. And you can see on the left-hand side, the menu, I think, underscores my point about policies being so important in your day-to-day operation. The conditions, this generates the alerts and lets you know when something is out of compliance or otherwise needs attention. We have our scheduled automations, and you can see we're leveraging several of these to onboard the device, to harden the endpoint and make it more secure. And then we also have recurring checks. The audits here, this updates it on a recurring basis. So that way we have the information that we need in an up-to-date context, and we're able to make accurate automations and accurate decisions based off of that information. We also have our Windows patching here, and we'll actually go ahead and dive into the Windows patching a little bit right now. We can see that we have it enabled at the very top. We can see we have two modes here. I'm going to strongly encourage you to use this mode right here, the Control Windows Patch Management. This gives you all the visibility, it gives you all the control. I will briefly show you what configure Windows updates looks like, just so you can see that this is probably not what you want. It takes away a lot of that control that we otherwise see in the Control Windows Patch Management mode. Now, this operates off two distinct schedules. We have a scan schedule that is going to look for any new patches available on the endpoint, and it will return that to our dashboard. So the scan schedule is informational. It returns all our patches to the dashboard based off the settings that we see here. We can see the different categories of patches that we're getting from Microsoft. We might auto reject the optional patches that we see here. And then for the important patches, we are automatically approving, but there are a few caveats to our automatic approval, which is a time delay. So for a critical update, I'm waiting a week. And then after that week, we'll go ahead and actually install it. For an update rollup and for a service pack, I'm waiting a little bit longer, giving myself more of a grace period. And why this is important is because Microsoft does occasionally release bad patches that end up causing way more problems than they actually solve. And so by having a delayed approval in this way, you get that ability to hear through the grapevine that something is not quite right with these latest batch of patches, and you can go ahead and reject those patches to prevent them from causing, again, more issues than they're actually solving. So we have the time delayed ability, and then for something like important and critical security updates, they're just approved automatically. There is no time delay in that workflow. Finally, if you want a middle ground here, the feature updates, so the big builds of Windows 10, the upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11, and the big builds of Windows 11, those will all be considered feature updates. And we have that set to manual because we want a human being to actually look at this and decide whether or not the patch should or should not be installed. And then the update schedule that we see right here, this would take effect. We're running this weekly, Monday at 8 a.m. And at that time, anything that has been approved will be installed. So you have this automated recurring process. This could happen every day, could happen every week, it could happen every month, it could happen on a custom schedule. Let's say we want to do something a couple days after Patch Tuesday, let's say 3 days. Like right here, we could even make this a quarterly schedule if we wanted to have a longer cadence in between our patches. And then usually most patches are going to require a reboot, and you can help move that along right here on a workstation like this policy is for. I might prompt them to reboot on a recurring basis. You can see here every 6 hours, I'm prompting them. They get 6 opportunities to reboot. And at the conclusion of those 6 opportunities, this math works out to be about a day and a half, it's going to go ahead and automatically reboot. So this is the workflow for Windows patching. I'll show you some visibility from the dashboard showing you compliance and what the approval process looks like in just a second. But I did want to go ahead and do a review of the software patching. And here you can see the methodology is basically the same. We're not reinventing the wheel here. There's a scan schedule, there's an update schedule, there are reboot options so that we can go ahead and reboot if necessary to complete the process of installing the patch. If we want to force close applications that don't support background updates so that the application can be effectively patched, we can do that. Of course, you do want to make sure that you educate your user base to know they shouldn't be leaving open work without saving in this case. So just be aware that they do need to make sure not to leave stuff open when they're going to be patching. Otherwise, they could potentially lose work if it's not auto saving or something of that nature. And up at the top, we have a different tab, the software tab. And this is where we can select what software we would like to patch. Now, I'm going to select everything here. We'll go ahead and add that. Great. This is, I think, about 115 applications currently. Now, here is where I want to go ahead and do a bit of a tease for our next release and a feature that we have coming out in open beta. You'll see that there is a source right here, and it's not much use because it is just a single source, the NinjaOne source that we're maintaining. However, in the 5.9 release, we're going to introduce an open beta that integrates with Winget. And so you'll actually have the ability to use the Winget source. That drastically expands the number of applications that can be patched. Um, the Winget, I think, supports over 5,000 at least individual applications. And of course, that would be thousands more than we currently support today. So we are very excited to expand our catalog. I believe the vast majority of applications will be available with this open beta. So that 5,000 number should be pretty close to what you see when that release comes out. Now, as a bit of preparation here, nobody can have access to this today. This is contingent on our 5.9 release coming out. It will be coming out in Australia, the APAC region, and Canada next week. And then it should come out to our European region a little bit later in June. And then for the vast majority of people in the US, you're going to see that in mid-July. So that's kind of our current timetable for the 5.9 release. That feels like I'm fairly confident in that. But again, things happen that those dates could slide a little bit. But that's our current goal right now is to have the Winget integration in an open beta with the 5.9 release. We've all received training on it, so everybody's ready to go. So I would say as the 5.9 release comes out in your specific region, please reach out to your account manager to let them know you're interested. And if you want to try that out, we are very excited to finally have that. See a lot of people very happy about this. So yes, we're very happy to finally deliver this Winget integration, expand our third-party patching catalog. Now I'll close out of here and I'll discard my changes. And now I want to go back to the dashboard to show you the visibility that you have with patching. And so when we come here, this is a pretty bare bones environment. This is a freshly imaged device that I just installed with the Ninja agent. So yeah, not really a whole lot going on in our dashboard right now, but we can go to the patching tab and go to OS patches. Now this right here, the overview, this gives us some insight into our overall patch compliance. Now again, this isn't particularly illustrative, I don't think, because it's just the one device. But you can see here 100% patching compliance. We're one of one. Everything is fully patched. I made sure that this device had patches installed before this webinar, so it would actually be patched and up to date. And you can see over here, we have installed patches, we have approved patches. You can click in here and see what would be approved or what would be pending, and then we can actually go ahead and approve or reject those patches. And so if we did have patches that were missing, we'd be able to easily see what are the devices that are missing a patches that need to have those patches installed so that we can maintain compliance. And so you can see here, we have the automated aspect of the patching occurring silently in the background. It's nothing that a technician needs to do as a manual process. It's all just occurring on that regularly scheduled basis. And the dashboard that we see here gives us insight into when things potentially have gone wrong, when the patch has failed, when there are pending patches that require approval for us to actually install. And so you get this visibility right here from the system level. You can also get a visibility on software patches as well, what's pending, what's approved, what's rejected, what has failed to install. And as a note, failed patches for both software applications as well as the operating system, they do get automatically reattempted. So based off of your schedule or a manual initiation of the patching cycle, anything that's failed will be automatically reattempted every single time a patching cycle runs on the device. So let's go ahead and talk about we'll move down our list here, talk about some other security focused tools that we have here. One would be Ninja Backup. Again, we have a backup overview here. We can see how much data is being consumed locally, how much data is being consumed in the cloud. We can see here our backup job success, our backup job failure. Fortunately, no failures today, but we can see that we've had 2 backup jobs today, and we can see where this data is retained. We can actually go to this device right here. And if we go into the backup overview or backup manager, I should say, this will show us the actual data that we've restored. And so this is a backup plan that I created earlier today, and it's backing up via file and folder. So we've specified certain folders where we want to back up all the files contained within those folders, and they're being backed up to the cloud. Now we could go ahead and back that up locally to network storage if we wanted. And if I'd had more time, I might have done an image backup as well. The image backup on Windows would be a full image of the disk, or at least the partitions that I selected. And then I'd be able to actually mount that image in the cloud to cherry pick individual files or folders that I wanted from that image. In this case, I just did the file and folder backup, backing up essentially the user profiles, and that's basically it. So let's say I have a situation where I need to actually restore a file. And so let's go ahead and actually click in here. And then I need to actually find where the file is. And fortunately, we have this search bar up here at the top. And so in my case, let's just say I am looking for extremely important data. We'll go ahead and search there. Right there, I have my extremely important data in the form of an Excel spreadsheet. I can go ahead and check the box there, and if I wanted to delete it, I could. If I wanted to download it to my machine that I'm on presently, I could do that too. But the more automated process here is to restore either directly to the device, or let's say this device is offline. We could also restore to another location, another device within Ninja that's also using Ninja Backup. And so we can take that file that was originally on a device that's now non-operable, it's offline, and we can then go ahead and restore that to a completely other device. very seamlessly. You can see if I had more devices in here, I only have the one, but if I had more devices, I could just go ahead and select that other device and then go ahead and choose my location of where I actually want to restore that critical data to. So in my case, I can go ahead and say, well, let's go to the C drive here. We're still going to go to the exact same machine. We have just the one revision here, but if we did have multiple revisions, you'd have the opportunity to choose if you wanted something from today or from last week or potentially even from last month. So we can go ahead and do the restore process there. And then we can go ahead and see that that's already done. That was a pretty small file. I don't think there's actually anything in it. It's just for demonstration purposes. As a side note here, since I'm kind of talking about the 5.9 release and some new features that are coming out, we have an enhancement to our image backup also coming out with that 5.9 release. I would classify this as a reimagining of how image backup works within Ninja. So if you are using that today or have seen it in the past, what we have coming out is going to be completely different. We're going to transition our current image backups over into legacy backups. We'll have a whole transition plan for that, but I'm very excited with the new image backups offering much more flexible retention, offering things like deduplication or chainless backups so that you don't necessarily need to have deltas or incrementals. That'll drastically save on space. And then, of course, it is also just a more efficient engine that'll operate more quickly. So nothing to show on that quite yet, but again, if you're interested in improved image backups, would definitely talk to your account manager or right around the time the 5.9 release comes out for you. So let's go ahead and talk about uh, an AV EDR integration. Again, in this particular case, I am utilizing SentinelOne. And so I've added that application in here. I'll point out here that we have other options. We have CrowdStrike, which you can see right here. We have WebRoot, which you can see right here. And Bitdefender Gravity Zone, I believe, is going into a GA state with the 5.9 release. It's currently, I think, in an open beta. So those would be the AV integrations that we offer. I'll showcase SentinelOne, but I will say from the Ninja side of things, the functionality that I'll show you with SentinelOne is for the most part duplicated with WebRoot, with Bitdefender Gravity Zone, and with CrowdStrike. The flow and functionality within Ninja is the same, although of course the tools themselves are going to operate differently. And again, SentinelOne is a policy setting. And so if we go back into policies, we saw earlier that we have the conditions that generate alerts. We have our Windows patching settings, our software patching settings, the scheduled automations that can occur, but then also antivirus. And so in this case, we can see that antivirus is just a drop-down selection. I selected SentinelOne, and then as this device was onboarded into Ninja, the policy setting said, hey, you need to have SentinelOne installed, and it automatically deployed it to the device. Now, this gives us the visibility that we need to know when something has gone wrong. I actually clicked out of that too quickly. Let's go back into the policy and then go down to the activity section. And you'll see here that we have these SentinelOne activities. So anytime any of these happen, these actions, like the SentinelOne agent is enabled or the installation failed, you're going to see this in the logs of the device. Activities are what NinjaOne calls logs. Now, if we want to also go ahead and raise visibility on this into an alert or into a ticket, some other kind of notification, we just need to click on one of them and we can get that ability. I'll start with one that I think everybody would want to leverage, which is the SentinelOne threat detected. And if we come in here, we'll see the option to have this create a ticket using a ticketing rule. Now this is using NinjaOne ticketing, but I'll point out that you would also have this capability using an integrated PSA, something like ConnectWise Manage or Autotask. And then if you have another service, you can also leverage the notification channels. The notification channels are great for deploying or I'll say sending notifications to third-party services that we might not have a native integration with. And this can come in the form of an email address or a SMS number. It can also come in the form of a dedicated service. We have Slack and PagerDuty as options for notification channels. And then I'll say the catch-all here is webhooks. We can send out webhooks containing this information. So any service that can accept webhooks, they can receive these activities, these notifications, and that just improves your visibility across the board. A question on Teams here, you can use the webhooks with Teams for sure. And I actually think we have documentation on that in our dojo that explicitly deals with how to make that work with Teams. Quick question here. If you enable CrowdStrike or Sentinel-1 integration, will it affect the old Sentinel-1 or CrowdStrike that is currently installed? Will it reinstall or conflict with it? If you already have Sentinel-1 installed, we're not going to conflict with that. But of course, on the Sentinel-1 side, you would need to make allowances to redirect your existing agents over to whatever your official NinjaOne portal is going to be. That's assuming that you switch your billing over to Ninja. Now, this visibility that you get, you'll see in the form of these alerts right here on the dashboard. We can see active and blocked and quarantine threats that have been detected. If we go to the devices dropdown and then to the threats option, we'll see here, oops, the threats option, we can click in there. And if we had a threat that was detected, we'd be able to see it right here. This would give you single click ability to go into Sentinel-1 or CrowdStrike or Gravity Zone to remediate in those portals. So you would get that quick and easy link right from this page right here, going into that other service, which I think saves time. And then just having the visibility in the endpoint management tool that you're using all day, being able to see when there's a threat right there, seeing an icon on the device saying, that there has been a threat detected. I think that there's a clear value add for me there in my workflow in having that information right here on this dashboard where I am doing the lion's share of my work. I might not necessarily be in my EDR tool all day, but there's a pretty good bet I'm going to be in Ninja all day. A question from Anderson Hill here on SQL backups, just before we get too far. We do support SQL backups as long as the underlying SQL application or database supports VSS. So something like Microsoft SQL would be totally fine. But of course, something like maybe MySQL or something like QuickBooks that does not support VSS, you would need to leverage command line options to generate the backup in a pre-script so that way we're able to successfully back up the backup file. So case in point for something like QuickBooks or MySQL, they have command line options where you can go ahead and actually create a backup. Or in the case of QuickBooks, it's an internal backup option, not a command line option. But MySQL has command line options, and you can go ahead and essentially force those services to truncate logs, do whatever you need to do to export a backup file, and then NinjaOne would back up that backup file. But anything VSS aware, you should be good to go on that. I would always recommend following the best practice for backing up your SQL databases based off the particular vendor, as there tends to be a little bit of variance there depending on who you're using. Let's go ahead and talk about endpoint hardening. So we're going to go back to the administration section, back into policies, and then back into our endpoint strengthening policy here. And then we'll go to scheduled automations. And so here you can see we have a couple of script blocks. And inside of these, you can see that we're actually executing a variety of scripts. And so what we can see here, this is our device onboarding. And the idea is that this could run once immediately as soon as the device joins Ninja. And so you can see here we're leveraging several different scripts, most of them from our template library, which I'll talk about in just a second, that are configuring the device for use. Now, these might not necessarily be endpoint hardening actions. It could just be configuration actions that we want to push. Maybe we want to disable CD-ROM drives, disable USB drives, disable floppy drives for the one person who's using it. But then we have some other options down here. One to block the Windows 11 upgrade on Windows 10 machines. This is from the template library, and it's probably one of the scripts that I've recommended the most over the existence of the template library. Everybody wants to block Windows 11. Below that, we have an option here that actually blocks the end user from installing updates on their own. And so the check for updates option inside of Windows Updates actually goes away entirely, or I shouldn't say goes away, it gets grayed out when you leverage this option right here. Now, we also have a script from our template library to actually check for Windows 11 compatibility. Can the device actually be upgraded to Windows 11? You're not in any near-term danger of Windows 10 being out of support, but there is an official end of life date. I believe it's October 2025. So based off of capital expenditures and planning, you may want to get started thinking about when devices need to be replaced before the end of this year or the end of the fiscal year, so that way you're prepared for when that does go end of life, October of next year, assuming I'm still right on that date. And then we have some other configuration actions. We're disabling fast boot, something that I like to do just because people will shut down their machines every day thinking they're shutting down their machine, but that doesn't actually reset the kernel. So disabling fast boot gets around that particular limitation. And then here we can also see we want to report on the active power plan of the device. And so we have a custom field that'll retain this information. This script is simply populating that custom field with that data. And this is something that that there's a lot of different options for. This is just an example of some scripts that might run at a device onboarding. Of course, installing applications, that would be another good option to have inside of your device onboarding script block here. Now let's talk about endpoint hardening. There are a variety of options that we can take from the template library. I think this one I've leveraged almost entirely from the template library. I think that there is one script in here that is a custom script, and it is an enable BitLocker script from CyberDrain, which is available in our dojo. But right here, we're taking several actions to enable the Windows firewall for starters. You can see these script variables make it very easy to enable or disable. One of the things I love about the template library is because we have these script variables, it takes the complexity of a script and it makes it incredibly easy to use. So there's actually no real coding that you need to do for really anything that I'm showing you today. It's all just leveraging the sort of plug and play, point and click capabilities of the template library and the script variables. We're also disabling auto run and autoplay on all drives. We're disabling PowerShell 2.0, SMBv1, weak TLS. We are disabling LM hash storage to prevent credential stuffing. We're disabling NetBIOS. We are disabling the ability to mount ISO images. We are enabling BitLocker. Keep in mind, this is probably going to require a reboot to finalize the enablement of BitLocker. And as a note here, good timing here, Shane has a question. He's been concerned to enable BitLocker automatically. Where do the encryption keys get stored? In the case of this particular script, it'll actually write the recovery key into the activities log, but Ninja also natively tracks the BitLocker recovery key, which hopefully is something that I can show a little bit later in the call. So it actually is something that gets automatically pulled by default, but you could also, again, store this in a custom field within Ninja for additional reporting capabilities. We're also setting our UAC settings here. We're setting a restriction so you can't use Python in Excel. We're setting an inactivity timeout so that after 15 minutes of inactivity, the machine is going to be locked. We are setting a minimum password complexity right here, 8 characters long. Password can only be 90 days old. We are setting or turning on the system restore point, system restore feature so that we're able to restore to a restore point if necessary, disabling local admin tools. We are disabling the Windows 10 keylogger. We are enabling password complexity here. And then finally, at the very end, we are enabling Smart Screen, although this is not a domain joined computer. So this right here, the potentially unwanted app protection, I do not believe that is going to work without being domain or at least domain or Entra joined, I believe. Now, everything that I mentioned right here, with the exception of one, the enable BitLocker script right here, everything that I've mentioned is in the template library. So let's close out of here and let's go look at that template library. You'll see right here, we have the template library. Now, this is getting a facelift in the 5.9 release. We are going to be changing these columns. We're going to be adding a date updated column, and you will be able to click on the table headers here. And that makes it much easier to know when one of these template library scripts has been updated. You can see that currently here today. It just gets easier with the 5.9 release. And the good thing about this is that the template library was actually recently updated. It was updated on May 24th. 52 brand new template library scripts, as well as updates to 45 existing scripts. And so all that can be found in the dojo. If we go here to the question mark in the top right, and then to our dojo, this is our knowledge base hosted on Zendesk. And you can see here, if we go into the news section, we have our release notes. I think this is where it is. No, it's not. Let's see. If I can type, that'd be great. There we go. No, that's not it. Here's the last one we did. There we go. New and updated scripts, June 2024. I am posting this in the chat for anybody who would like to look at it. I saw that, David. Now here we're leveraging some of these scripts. Again, you can see here, disabling auto run, disabling fast food, disable local admin tools, disabling PowerShell 2.0. disabling SMBv1 or weak TLS, all something that you can easily import and easily implement using the policy methodology that I just showed. Now, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Taking some of these actions can have a very real and negative impact on your business operation. I know that in the past, I've certainly spoken with people who said, yeah, I disabled the weak TLS. And unfortunately, for a particular user, a particular customer, or a branch, it broke something. It broke some legacy application that hadn't been updated to use a more modern version of TLS. Um, so this is again something I strongly recommend to test. So creating a test environment that uses devices that are set up like the machines that you would be managing in the field, pushing these configuration changes and ensuring that nothing breaks unexpectedly. So we do have to balance the needs of the business with the needs of security. That is a push pull that'll probably persist until the end of time, but it's always good to try and have a strong evaluation process, accounting for all the variables before pushing all these changes, because again, they can have a very real impact that you may very well not want to have to deal with at that particular moment in time. So I would say that this is likely going to be an iterative process for you over time to do some testing and decide whether or not these are changes that can exist in your environment without, again, breaking the regular business operation for your end users. Now, there is a third-party tool here that I will mention just so everybody is aware of it. Uh, it has a very weird name. It is called Hardening Kitty. It is a third-party PowerShell tool that is designed to help take benchmarks like the CIS benchmark, like the DoD STIGs. I think it also uses the Microsoft security baselines, and it also has an option, I think, for the Sisyphus baselines, which is the German version of the FBI. I think their version of recommended endpoint hardening practices. And so what this tool actually does is it will compare your device that you run the script on against your finding list, which would be the recommended security settings for each of those benchmarks that I mentioned: CIS, DoD STIGs, Sisyphus is the German one, Microsoft security baselines. And it says, okay, it can produce a report saying, hey, here's where you haven't made this particular change. It can provide a score showing you what the estimated hardening score of the device is. Now, I will recommend that you use this with utmost caution. I strictly use it for auditing purposes. You can see the script right here available from the Hardening Kitty GitHub. We'll download and install the PowerShell module. And then I have another script right here. It'll actually retrieve the score here. It runs it in audit mode, which you can see right here on line 2. And it retrieves the score and will put it into a custom field. Again, I am using this in audit mode only. And the reason for that being is if I were to go ahead and say, hey, let's go ahead and run this script and let's push all these endpoint hardening configurations, it is going to break something. I guarantee it. Something is going to stop working. It is a matter of how bad is it going to be. Is it going to be a minor annoyance? Is it going to be a 5-alarm fire? So again, I cannot emphasize enough that these tools should be used judiciously. And I am strongly recommending that when you use Hardening Kitty, at least initially, use the audit function to find out what the state of play is on the device, and then use your test lab to go ahead and gradually implement some of these configurations so that you're able to safely secure your environment. You guys are gonna give me a heart attack in the chat here. Test and prod. So let's go back to our policies and let's talk about how we can have the ongoing compliance element here. And what I've done with the conditions is I've broken these down by sort of the general area that we want to maintain compliance on. Again, this doesn't have any of, I'll say, the real world and conditions, things like disk space or disk active time, high RAM usage, applications I want to ensure are deployed, or ongoing services that I want to maintain in an up status. This is really focused just on kind of more of the security um, aspect of what we want to maintain compliance with. Uh, somebody thankfully is the somebody thankfully is posting in the chat the GitHub for Hardening Kitty. Um, so yes, that is in there. And then this also was a topic of a previous webinar we did. I think it was called Proactively Protect. It is available on the YouTube channel, and we go into a lot more depth on the hardening kitty and how to utilize it. And I think we include some links there, including links to some of the scripts that I showed here, specifically the one about retrieving the score and putting it into the custom field. So would highly recommend that webinar. So now we look at the conditions. We can see here we have a few. We have auditing. I would say that these are security compliance checks to ensure that we're still in compliance with our desired security settings. Now we have some patching related ones, and this lets us know when we have a CVSS score above a certain threshold that's been available for at least 2 days. In this case, my threshold is 8.5. If there's a patch that is has a CVSS score of 8.5 or greater, and it's been available for at least 2 days, we're going to receive an alert letting us know, hey, you need to actually install this patch. It's an out-of-band update that needs to be installed. We can also know when a device has not installed the patch in 30 days. And when I image the test device that you guys saw earlier, it triggered that alert as soon as I installed the Ninja agent on it because a patch had not been installed in 30 days. And as soon as I ran a patching cycle through Ninja, that alert was able to be reset. And then finally, we have a script result condition here, and this is checking to see if the Windows Update service is disabled. This is the ghost of IT past coming back to haunt me. One time, the organization that I worked for purchased some new locations. I went there to do some fact finding and figure out how to bring them into compliance with our standards. Their standards were non-existent. There was not a single genuine copy of Windows in the building, and they had disabled the Windows Update service. I guess to prevent pop-ups from happening or something of that nature. So obviously nothing I would recommend. And so therefore I have this script which checks to see if that service is disabled and creates an alert if it is. This is a useful bit here, this script result condition, because it allows you to run scripts on a recurring basis and monitor either the text string output or the exit code, or both in this case, to raise an alert. And so there's a lot of scripts inside of the template library that allow you to convert those scripts into alerts. You can see us taking advantage of some of these for the security audits that we see up here. Brute force login attempts. This can run every 30 minutes, and it checks for the preceding hours worth of event logs to see if anybody has tried to log in unsuccessfully 8 times or more. And then it would go ahead and raise that alert, letting us know that somebody is attempting to brute force our system. We can also see this with firewall status. We're deploying the firewall as enabled as a part of our device onboarding. However, we want to maintain that ongoing compliance over time. And so we can run another script from the template library to audit the firewall status. And if it is not enabled, we'll see that exit code of 1. And that would, again, allow us, that would raise the alert and give us visibility on when something is not in compliance with our settings. Now, this can also have an automated element here. Let's say I want to know when the firewall status is not in compliance. It would be great if I could automate this to be in compliance. And so therefore, I can come in here and select my enable firewall script right here, set it to enable. And so now I have the firewall status alert letting me know when it's not in compliance. I have the script running to go ahead and put me back in compliance. And assuming that script is successful right here, this will go ahead and take this alert off the board. It'll eliminate that noise that I don't care about because the issue's been solved, right? Now, this can also work with NinjaOne ticketing or our integrated PSAs like ConnectWise Manage or Autotask, because we can create with a closed loop setting. And what that means is when we automatically resolve this alert because the script was successful and was able to enable the firewall, we can go ahead and close that ticket as well. So you're removing not just the alert on the dashboard, you're also removing the ticket as well. We can also see auditing the system restore status, and there we have the same sort of workflow. If we don't have operational system restore status, let's go ahead and run a script to enable it on. And again, that would automatically eliminate the alert and the corresponding ticket, assuming we were using one, once that process has gone through. We're also doing the same thing with UAC level here. Won't rehash that too much. I think you can see what I'm going for here. And then down here at the bottom, we have some user-focused actions. We know when a user account has been locked out as the result of an event ID that triggers. We know when an account has been deleted or disabled, when an account has been created or disabled. And then finally, we have an inactive account alert, which is going to go ahead and actually look for any accounts that haven't logged in a certain amount of time. I think in my case, I've set it to be 90 days. And so if nobody has logged in within 90 days, we receive an alert letting us know that somebody who doesn't log into this device often is still an active user. Do we want to disable them? Do we want to remediate them by removing them in some way, blocking their access, just to ensure that only people who should have access to the device actually have access? Oh, thank you. Somebody posted a link to the Proactively Protect webinar regarding Hardening Kitty and the scripts. And so I'm going to go ahead and repost that to everyone. I think it was sent just to the hosts and panelists. So that's to everybody in case anybody was looking for the previous webinar that we did on that topic. And now one last thing to talk about here. We've discussed kind of the policy section here and everything that we can do. Okay, I'm not saving that. We've discussed sort of all our various options here. I did want to again talk about another cool feature coming out in 5.9. Hopefully this doesn't feel like too much of a tease, but we have another cool feature coming out with vulnerability scanning. Now, this is not Ninja performing the vulnerability scan itself. This does rely on an external service that you are already leveraging. There are many out there, Tenable, Qualys, I forget all the other ones that are out there, but there are many different vulnerability tools out there, and they allow you to export a CSV listing all your vulnerabilities. And what Ninja is bringing into an open beta with the 5.9 release is going to be an application that you enable right here, and you'll be able to actually import that CSV in the Ninja to denote where you have those currently active vulnerabilities. So again, this is going to be a beta state. This is not what this product will ultimately be in its final form. But I think it's going to be a big value add for anybody who's currently leveraging vulnerability scanning today and wants to see a tighter integration in the Ninja. This is just the start of more to come. So I'll go ahead and end on that particular little tease note there for the vulnerability scanning. Like I said, a lot of new stuff coming in the 5.9 release. Just to reiterate, you're going to see that in probably in the next week if you're in Canada or Australia, a little bit later in June if you're in Europe, and then in mid-July if you are in the United States. So we can see here, I think, some pretty empirical data. I think, again, this comes from Omdia here, showing that people switching to NinjaOne are seeing drastic benefits in terms of speed, efficiency, ease of use, streamlined operation. Now, how this ultimately impacts your building a culture of security. How can we take what we're talking about here, what we've been talking about for most of this year on a lot of these webinars, and how can we start to actually put that into practice in the real world here? I think it starts by having a plan. If we come away from nothing else, if you're talking about strengthening your security posture, having a plan is absolutely necessary. So what do you actually want to accomplish? Look at some of the CIS benchmarks, the Microsoft security benchmarks, the DoD STIGs. Look at that and evaluate what you actually want to implement and what is feasible to implement based off of how you currently support your end users. You need to get buy-in from the team. I saw somebody mention something here about how they push their hardening changes to the help desk, which is something I hadn't thought about. I might have hated that, but they mentioned that they saw some pretty great feedback and great results on that because you're speaking with and dealing with people who are naturally more technical, and so that feedback I think is going to be more valuable than maybe your bog standard end user. Have regularly scheduled security and automation focused meetings to talk about progress. Like I said, this is an iterative process. This is not going to be overnight. Think in terms of months. Do not think in terms of days when it comes to implementing endpoint hardening. And of course, have a test lab. I'm a big fan of that. Having test machines that match what your end users are using, has everything configured and installed like your end users have, and then you're able to evaluate what works and what doesn't. Now, I did promise a prize here, a giveaway at the end. So we're going to bring out a new challenger, a new fighter approaches. JP, would you like to come out and announce our prize for today?
Hey Jeff, thanks for introducing me. Hi everyone, my name's JP. I'm a new marketing coordinator here. Don't worry, Andrew's still around. He's just a little behind the scenes now, so he's in the backstage right now. He's been watching over. But yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for so much for joining us on this webinar. I'm excited to reveal who the winner of the giveaway is. As you can see, we have the Lego NES system, the Nintendo Switch OLED, the Valve Steam Deck, and the Xbox Series S. So a bit of a gamer's paradise here. But yes, a drum roll, please. I guess would be drum emojis in the chat. The winner of today's session is Mike Dowling. So everyone, big congrats to Mike Dowling. I hope he's excited. I hope he does a little bit of gaming, and if not, a little bit of Legoing. But be expecting an email from me, Mike, within the next couple of days with the instructions on how to redeem your prize. It'll be coming from my email, jp.bremer@ninjaone.com. And yeah, I'm very excited for you. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you very much, JP. I will do a lightning round here, a couple of questions in the chat. I will do my best to get to as many as possible. We have 1 minute left. We have a question with Winget. Will we still see the NinjaOne source expand with new application updates? Absolutely. We are not relying wholly on Winget. That is obviously only going to support Windows workstations, so the NinjaOne catalog will continue to grow and expand over time. I think I've said already, but 5.9, if you're outside the US, it's in June. If you're inside the US, it's probably going to be in July. Question on Bitdefender Gravity Zone and potentially converting to Bitdefender SDK. I would recommend sticking with Gravity Zone. That is going to be our fully featured Bitdefender integration moving forward. Question from Tom here on CrowdStrike. What is the benefit of using the NinjaOne modules? It's the visibility. It's having the visibility on detected threats and the automated installation of CrowdStrike through your existing endpoint management tool. Also using Intune from Microsoft for Endpoint. What are the differences? I would say speed is the biggest single thing with Intune. Intune's an MDM, and so that gives you eventual consistency. NinjaOne has an agent-based approach that is much speedier, much faster. We also don't have the same sort of licensing restrictions that Intune has. A question from Derek here on BitLocker. We do have the ability to report on the BitLocker key, whether it's enabled or not. You can also put that into a custom field, the key, and that way you would have the ability to export it more broadly. So there is a Dojo script that will put the recovery key into a custom field for more broad-based reporting. And okay, we'll end on this one. Jason asks, what happened to the dark mode feature release? It is absolutely underway. You're probably not going to see that until later this year. But the design team is hard at work on completely revamping the look of the dashboard, including adding in dark mode. So right there, I think that is, we're 1 minute over time. Thank you everybody who attended today. If you did have any questions, please feel free to reach out, jeff.hunter@ninjaone.com. Would love to keep the conversation going. Thank you again, and hope you have a very good rest of your Tuesday. Take care.